We're now joined by three students to share their views on the scene in the Middle East, on education, on whether it's a decent job scene, on the solvency and responsibility of governments, on corruption, all of the above in the region and beyond. Zineb Riboua is a Moroccan scholar, now a candidate for Masters in Public Policy at Georgetown University, so she's in my town. Ahmed Sultan Al-Darmaki is from the UAE and is a student at Wesleyan University, majoring in economics and minoring in data science and East Asian studies. I don't know if he speaks Japanese, but Hajime Mashte if you do. And Eli Kanak Berman is from Israel and formerly worked with the Israeli parliament members and the Israel UN delegation. He's now a law student at IDC Herzliya. I've mentioned Eli a few times already this morning. Eli, it's great to see you in person. Enjoyed our conversation the other day. You know, really what I want to get at for a moment, I'm going to start with Zineb, is to talk a little bit about the blind spots as you see them among, you know, we're all talking about youth, and one of the reasons I find this youth survey so important is it gives us a chance to listen to the youth, both the hopes they have, but the frustrations they have. I'd like to just start with a conversation about blind spots. What are people in government, what are people who are older not getting that they need to get from your generation?
Thank you very much for inviting me. Just to begin, I think that it's mainly the entrepreneurial spirit. As I was working at the Atlantic Council on COVID-19 and how it affected the youth, I saw how much it actually gave them some inspiration. During the lockdowns, they had to innovate. They used their development skills, and I think that this kind of entrepreneurial skills and this mindset was something that I think other generations have not seen before. And the Middle East and North Africa, they have so much human capital and so much potential that we've seen during this pandemic. And I think that this is the main aspect, that entrepreneurial spirit, innovation, this is something that I think the youth is very much focused on. So I think this is mainly the blind spot for me. And as you were mentioning before, China, I think also China is seen today as a partner, and I think that youth they have like a different idea of how can we do partnerships with other countries, with like either it's cultural programs, either it's education, putting aside the differences and working together. I think it's something that Arab youth is very focused on.
Zina, before I leave you, I want to ask you, because you said something really profound. You mentioned COVID-19, and one of the things that this survey shows is that 1 in 5 young people have known someone who has contracted COVID-19 or died from COVID-19. It's really impacted them, their job and economic condition in the Middle East. And are you saying in the middle of that terrible drama, people are finding ways and want ways to be entrepreneurial, want to adjust, want that flexibility? I just want to make sure that I'm getting this right.
Yeah, exactly. I saw that happening in Tunisia. I saw that happening in Morocco and other Gulf countries. In Israel, I saw that everywhere where people got together. They tried to give something. They tried to help each other, and they have organized so many events. They have tried virtual events, and they have tried to be. We always say that, yeah, it's the government that needs to give the economic opportunities, etc. But this time we saw something really changing. We saw how much young people, they wanted to contribute. They wanted to save their other citizens from this pandemic. And this is I think a change that we have seen, but not as much as today.
Thank you. Eli, let me ask you a similar question and get from you an understanding. I mean, you are already dealing with a lot of folks in power. You're dealing with diplomats and national governments, so hopefully they haven't corrupted you too much yet, and you remember that innocent mind you used to have. But I mean, I'm interested in how you as a young guy in this, and of course we know about the Abraham Accords, but what do you think the blind spots are as we look at youth in the region? And now the region is defined less dividedly, if I may, and I'm just wondering how you see that. And I know there's a lot of diversity out there, folks, but I would love to hear Eli's views.
So firstly, I would like to say how pleased I am to participate in this conference and the furtherance of the goals of the Abraham Accord, particularly meaningful for me as being also an American, where the U.S. has obviously invested in it, and been instrumental in it, and also as an Israeli. My Jewish name, Eli, is short for Eliezer, which symbolizes the possibilities of closeness, peace with our nations. As my namesake, Eliezer, who was from Damascus, was the original Abraham's first colleague, an original supporter and head of his household, and symbolic of the opportunities that we now have for peace and prosperity for our people. To me, first, as 2020 has brought unexpected challenges, the recent accords is a shining light in a world darkened by the pandemic. Now, with regards to opportunities for youth and how it's aligned between the different countries, I see great similarities between challenges that Israeli youth are going through and Arab youth in various different countries. I think as time goes by, we see more similarities between each other than differences. I agree a lot also with the ambassador, the minister who spoke before us beautifully, how the previous notions of the previous generation are not relevant anymore to us. We are young-minded, seeking new opportunities. We're trying to forget as much as we can the past. And we are going through life basically with the same challenges as each other. And we prefer to go through it together than conflicted with each other. And I think that especially disagreement and obviously dialogues like this could bring a lot of prosperity for us for the future.
Eli, before, again, I want to jump over to Ahmed in just a moment, but you know, if you look at that study, and I know you've not studied in the detail that I have, when you look at youth in the region and their concerns about government corruption, and you also look at youth in the region and their desire to emigrate, and those numbers are off the wall, but you look at where they go. Lebanon comes out super high in those data. You know, Lebanon, with all due respect to everyone out there, we're going to have a friend from Lebanon in a minute, but it looks like it's ready to blow up. And I'm just wondering, when you look at that region and these attitudes and what the youth are saying and feeling about the governments, you know, from a risk assessment perspective, it's very valuable information. I'm just interested, I know you're not responsible, but you do talk about diplomats. Do you feel like we ought to be doing more to begin looking to some of these hot zones and figure out how we either respond to it or how we put up some red flags in the region? Because, you know, this is not a kumbaya discussion. There are a lot of parts of the Middle East that are in real tumult and crisis right now. It's not all pretty. And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about how we might take some of the strengths in Israel, some of the strengths in UAE, some of the strengths in other places, and begin trying to create greater stability. Sorry for the long-winded question.
No, it's a great question. I do think we should take responsibility. I think that we live in a tight-knit region, that if we should take more responsibility for the actions in different countries. I wish there was a dialogue like that. Sadly, I do not think that in this present time there's a dialogue between the two governments, but we could make unofficial dialogue. We could have young people from different countries speak to one another. I think that building bridges like we're doing here is tremendous, that can create future relationships and future opportunities that will build, who knows, maybe people over here will be the future leaders of their countries, and we'll be able to create a dialogue and bring peace to our nations. I think that corruption, especially in our region, doesn't bypass, obviously, my country in some aspects, is a tremendous problem. And we see in a lot of countries, and I guess it's the Western world responsibility to speak out against it. I don't know exactly what the temperament and what the actions they have to combat this kind of behavior, but definitely I think that the Western world should say something and try to create actions that will prevent corruption in these kind of governments.
Great.
I also want to say, I would also like to add that me and my friend, we've been working to establish these kind of relationships. We actually created this association called the Middle East International Student Association, or MESA. We're looking to cultivate dialogue and collaboration among Middle Eastern students from all across the region. So I urge on you guys to follow us on Facebook and follow me on Facebook and to continue to cultivate this important dialogue to build relationships for the future.
That's a great offer. So say that one more time again, the Middle East what?
The Middle East International Student Association, short for MESA. We're building it now, me and my Israeli partner, Tal Rimon. We are trying to build relationships between different students, cultivating with business interests, with high-tech interests, even with sports or any interest that interests youth in the region. And we think that the best way to build dialogue, to build a better future is through dialogue and establishing these kind of relationships.
Well, good. Well, Ahmed, hopefully they're going to let economists in into that. But let me ask you, I mean, you're our economic brain here for a minute, and I would love, to ask you the same thing about blind spots that you see it, but I would love you to give a tilt to talking about the economic conditions, because I've never, I'm in the Middle East a lot. I mean, and when we were all traveling, never met more creative people, more incredible ideas. We talk about entrepreneurship as Zineb did, but I've never seen cultures where if you fail, you are in trouble in ways that you're not in other parts of the world. So I'd love to get your sense of what are blind spots and having a serious economic discussion about growing jobs, growing business, and getting the economy in the region where it needs to be.
I think, to be honest, the blind spot that I see today is like one of the perspective on education and older people, as there are a cultural change that is happening, but still something as finishing post-secondary school and going for something as like freelancing would be something not yet socially accepted. So, but we are getting there. Things are changing. We're having startup hubs. We're getting more exposed to the spirit of taking risks and innovating, which is really important in the process of learning as even as economists, how we can better allocate resources to the most use. Another thing I would say in terms of we kind of see the UAE in terms of the trade that it has with its allies, and as have been mentioned before by the survey that UAE is having a lot of allies. That means there's more economic prosperity. There are more opportunities. There are more great ideas coming in. We are getting in terms of our relationship with China. There are a lot of concepts such as the sharing economy, a new concept that utilizes things that are used rather than owned by people. If you think about, like, for example, cars. We barely use our cars. Like 30% of the time, it's just parked in somewhere, and 70% of the time it's parked somewhere, and 30% of the time it's used. So things as creating more efficient platform to reduce those unnecessary waste and reduce the waste of resources is something that we're currently getting to know.
Ahmed, just real quick, because I want to get just one more question to you real fast. But we talk a lot about the fact that so many Arab youth now are buying things online, consumers online, reading news online. They're on TikTok. I don't know if you have a TikTok account. I do. I'm trying to get young. But my question is, do you sense tension between governments that love to control and regulate and the digital opportunities that are expanding like crazy?
No, actually, I see that there are actually like promoting towards the use of digital technology as it has been like for example there has been crowdfunding, which was like really supported by the government. It's a platform, a lending platform, peer-to-peer. So something like technology enhancements, the use of TikTok.
Right.
It's mostly it's really a driver of economic growth there, and it's really supported.
Well, great. Thank you. Let me get three of you up real quick, because I'm going to ask you really quick, because we're out of time. But I'd be interested in, there are two issues. We've been taking questions. So, Mark in New Haven, we've got some other questions that are coming on. One of the areas that we didn't get into at all in the discussion is, are Arab youth in the region connected to some of the big transnational questions, like climate change? Does climate change matter, in this part of the world? And on the findings about gender equity, gender fairness, equal opportunities. Is that real or is that an illusion? So let's just go real fast, those two things, climate and gender. Let's start with Ahmed. No, let's start with Zineb. I'm sorry, Zineb.
Okay. Yeah. So as we were talking about social media, I think that social media played a big role in raising awareness about gender issues and climate change. I think it offered a platform so that people can talk about it, so that Arab youth can actually exchange the problems they found locally, because the problem is so global that each step that is taken locally is a big can make a big change. So I think that these platforms offered a big opportunity for Arab youth. And in terms of gender issues and in terms of the finding of the surveys, it is clear that Arab women are today embracing opportunities. There are less and less boundaries, and even they don't even feel it, because I think this is a really generational change, I may say, or cultural, because they find they have potential and there's a market for it, and they just embrace it. So I think that yes, climate change and gender issues are today topics that our youth are very much discussing.
Well, thank you. Eli, your quick thoughts, climate, gender.
First of all, I want to say I want to know your TikTok handle so we can get you more followers in Israel here.
Yeah, I'm going to do one of those little dances. I haven't done that yet. I'm just following. I'm learning, though.
Maybe you can dance to the horror or something like that,
Exactly.
Second to your question, I think what's amazing about this panel is that Israeli and Arab youth have so much more in common than different. I think as an Israeli youth, I am more in common with Arab youth and their tribunals they're going through in life than people more in the Western world. For example, I consider myself a traditional person, and we have challenges in Israel with regards to religion and how that adapts to the future world. And I know Arab youth have the same challenges in their country, where you have a government who is more traditional religious and the next generation is less, and how to have a balance. And I think in that regard, we're very, very similar. I think with regards to gender aspects and climate change, those are big issues that we're trying to improve also in Israel. I know with regards to young people, I guess, and my friends in my circles, that these are issues that are very important to them. And we want to obviously leave the planet a better place than we got it. And we want to improve. And we believe in total equality, obviously, between the two genders. And I think this panel is a great opening. And we should obviously have more events like this in the future and build on this.
Thank you. Yeah. Ahmed, I'm going to give you the last quick 2 words. Climate, gender.
So in terms of climate change, like in the UAE, I can see, like, for example, we have Masdar City, which is a city that is run on renewable energy. And they also provide programs that help startups address climate change issues. So the climate change landscape is there. But for example, and in terms of women equality, I'm really witnessing it today. I get the same opportunities as my sister sibling has. So we're actually getting there, and I think we're there.
Well, thank you, Ahmed. Excuse me for butchering. Ahmed Sultan Al-Darmaki at Wesleyan University, but also from the UAE. Zineb Riboua, student at Georgetown University, originally from Morocco. Thank you so much. You win the backdrop. I love the painting behind you over your right shoulder. And Eli Chanak-Berman, law student, IDC Herzliya from Israel. You're all wonderful discussion. I wish we could. Let's do this again, okay? Let's promise we're all going to get together again without a 15-minute time gap, okay? So we'll do this again. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.